Hi, I'm a beginner artist. So, I'd actually planned talking about beginner artists as a whole topic and the hate they get, but I ended up waking up to being tagged in a video about over 10 times of a beginner artist who was harassed off the internet yet again. But luckily, mid-script, I can say that they're back and have a solid fan base due to the support that came after the hate, so yes. I'm so glad to see TikTok being decent for once. But this time, the situation consists of an artist who simply wanted to share their attempt at the jelly art style, which if you're confused, look it up here on YouTube, TikTok, maybe Pinterest, and you'll get your answer. But instead of support, they got harassed to the point of doxing. You heard that right. Doxing over a drawing. God, this is a wild one. I will discuss this and a bit of other things about beginner artists online in general, so yeah. Hey there yappers, it's Bri, and I've got another unfortunate situation of TikTokers being jerks, but what's new? If you're new here, I do content like this all the time, and just art in general, so if that's the content you enjoy, I would really recommend subscribing, because at the time of this video, we're actually a bit over halfway to 80k, which is genuinely baffling, so thank you guys so much. And before we begin, as usual, here are my special super thank yous. Moon Orchid, Psyloki, Amy Edits 165, Hello 3LL, Ducky is Trapped, Claretta, Bun Cakes, God Studios, Crying Kitty 1, Kirari Plays, and 2 Gamers at Time 782. And as always, I apologize if I said any names wrong, and if you aren't here, you'll be on the next one. But enough of this yapping, on to the topics yapping. Beginner artists. Artists that are new to the art world. It has no age range or time frame. Anyone could be a beginner at art. You could be a beginner at age 3 or a beginner at age 96. You can consider yourself a beginner if you've been drawing for a month, a year, maybe even a couple years. Honestly, I don't know when the label of being a beginner is stripped from an artist. Honestly, I think it's up to the artist to decide when they're out of that zone, since it's more of a self-given title. You don't even need a title at all if you want, since titles aren't really that necessary. Just call yourself an artist if you want, no fancy titles needed. Usually people give themselves the title to say, hey, I'm still learning, help is cool, and just know I'm not some professional, so cut me some slack. And usually from what I used to see, beginners for the most part were treated like some precious angels that would be treated with such love and care. Need tips? We're happy to help. Want support? Sure. But recently I noticed an uprising in the hate of beginner artists. We stopped treating them like these lovely angels and more like Satan spawns. Beginner? Ew! Beginner, go away. Like, I see people acting like being nice isn't an option anymore. From non-artists and artists alike. We can be so unwelcoming, especially on apps like TikTok, it's insane. And yes, it's not really new. Internet hate isn't new. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like there's so much more in the art community nowadays in these past few years. I mean, beginners barely get views in the first place, which sucks, but when they do, honestly, it might be worse since there's so much backlash over someone just trying to learn a hobby. A lot of people chalked it up to people just realizing during their stay at home in 2020 that we can just be massive jerks with barely any repercussions online. It definitely seems like a lot like that's the case because people online just feel meaner and more extreme, and this is definitely seen in the art community online. Especially with this bull art lore, just out here targeting beginners. I constantly see beginners getting bashed through these parody videos. And that's actually what happened in today's situation. So as I mentioned mere minutes ago, I had gotten a request to talk about this. A lot. And checking the situation, I was disappointed as usual. Only a little over a week ago, Tammy Draws uploaded a lovely drawing made to study the jelly art style as a beginner. And for a beginner, let's be honest, it really wasn't that bad at all. When I was a beginner, I probably would have looked up to this, like being completely honest, because my old art was... yeah, it probably needed a warning. Especially considering the jelly art style requires a lot of rendering and a mix of stylized work and realism, which for a beginner artist can be really hard depending on the person. And as always, when I get these sort of requests, I took a deep sigh and just opened the comments, to which I wasn't surprised in the slightest. And at the time of seeing this, the comments had a lot of hate. As of lately, there's been a lot more support, but God, were people brutal in the beginning. Let's just show some of the comments Tammy shared in a slideshow she made venting about it, huh? Like, dear God, this is awful. And of course you got the classic, if you think this is good, you're lying. Because TikTok morons can't comprehend the fact that art is subjective. And if you thought this was all, nah. She also got death threats and was apparently doxxed because that's a totally normal response to not liking an art piece. And you know what? I believe it. I've gotten so many death threats on that app, it's actually insane. Literally, I posted a funny video about embarrassing childhood moments a couple weeks ago, and got told to delete myself from the game of life. Like, what? These people are genuinely insane. It wasn't even like 1 or 2 people. This was like over 10 people. Like, please get better hobbies than scrolling on TikTok spreading hate for no reason. And I think the weirdest thing is, if you call this behavior out, or if you're rightfully upset about this, people call you sensitive. And I think this is a bigger issue online with how our empathy is literally dying thanks to the hellhole of the internet. No, you absolute trash muncher, this is not what sensitive is. Anyone who isn't grass deprived isn't gonna just expect to get told to off themselves or get harassed over a drawing. Yes, if you're gonna post, you need to be aware and mentally prepare yourself for this. But in a lot of cases, you could prepare and be aware, but the second things get out of hand, it's still shocking, especially when it's over the most ridiculous reasons. Because this is not normal human behavior. I rarely see this bull being said in real life. You know why? Because you're less likely to get away with it. Like, yeah, people get bullied and get told to end themselves in real life, but I don't think I've ever seen it to this extreme. And online, it's not like it's a small group of immature people. When people are getting harassed off the internet, it's mainly due to thousands spouting this and encouraging it. There's a difference in being sensitive and having to put up with whatever this is. A comment that's intention is meant to hurt someone, shocker, could potentially hurt them depending on who it is. And yeah, turn off the phone, but what was seen, and it still messed the hell up. Yeah, it won't stop and there's nothing we can do, but when I see a jerk, I will call you a jerk. And the best thing you guys can honestly do is block and report and do the opposite of them and be positive, not a miserable jerk. And what's so sad is for many this is considered a norm on online communities like TikTok. Many beginner artists are darn near burned at the stake for just existing. That's it. If you hate it so much, just scroll, or I don't know, give polite constructive criticism if they're open to it. Because majority of these beginner artists are literally looking for tips. So it baffles me when people are just more focused on trying to get them to quit. I think people are forgetting or just don't care, but these are human beings. Human beings being harassed for just wanting to learn a hobby. Do you guys understand how absolutely insane you guys sound? And of course, the beginner artist social experiments don't help beginner artist treatment now, since in the art community, people suspect almost all beginners of being social experiments. Like my mutual who's a beginner has literally gotten accused so many times just because she's a beginner. Actually, you guys might be confused saying, what do you mean beginner artist social experiments? So let's backtrack. This takes place back maybe around May, and has continued on to this day. I mean, it existed before then, but as of lately it became more of a trend, if you will. It started as social experiments and just became a way to get clout, but a couple weeks ago I kept seeing fake beginner artists on my TikTok For You page. As of lately it died down, but I think it definitely had a bit of an impact on how people treat beginner artists, mainly just on TikTok. I believe it started with a user that goes by Candy, who presented themselves as a beginner artist and over time quote-unquote progressed. It was a really fast improvement, and the style to many was described that it just looked like an experienced artist trying to look like a beginner artist, so many didn't believe them from the start. And the comments were actually mixed with hate and support, to my surprise. I expected a lot more hate. But Candy ended up getting a lot of clout and eventually came out and basically said, "So I was never actually a beginner. My regular art just got no recognition, so I decided to make an account acting like a beginner as a social experiment, and since it did well, I continued on with it since I ended up getting more views and support there." And honestly, with the lack of support that artists get on social media, I don't blame Candy. I don't think what Candy did was really wrong. Sure, for many who actually believe them, they felt a bit betrayed, and I get that. And people often blame Candy for it becoming a whole trend after it blew up. But it was a simple, harmless experiment, which I honestly thought would be a great way to really show what it's like being a beginner artist that goes viral on TikTok. I had actually thought about making similar experiments way back on this channel. Maybe even in the future I could still do this after the trend has long passed. It's a good way to give a perspective and analyze how we react to these situations from a studying viewpoint. I will be aware of what's to come and be prepared for backlash, seeing whether the hater support outweighs the other. It'd honestly be a really interesting experiment, and Candy didn't have any ill intent. Even if part of it had to do with clout, I don't believe what Candy did was wrong. Yet TikTok disagreed and gave them so much backlash they left that account and their original art account, which was completely unnecessary. But yes, I will acknowledge the negatives to this trend of experiments. Like how it eventually became people using it for clout, which isn't that bad since they aren't harming anyone. But yes, it can take attention from beginner artists, and I do get finding the repetitiveness annoying. I mean, I did after the 10th one, but if something gets popular, it's gonna trend, and we can't really put blame on Candy for that. And if you hate the experiments, that's perfectly fine, and I don't really blame you. Just don't go around harassing people. It's better to just not interact. And yes, this did lead to many beginners being labeled as fakes, and that sucks, but again, that's more of a crappy outcome that I can guarantee Candy did not plan. And I don't think we should be going around accusing those of being fakes. If you believe it's a fake, scroll and don't give them attention. If you want, maybe comment something nice to set a positive example, but don't go around harassing artists for simply experimenting, since there are many actual beginners getting hate for this. I've seen Tammy get this accusation a bit, which yeah, it could very well be a possibility considering the popularity, so I get why you'd think that. But Tammy is still a person. She shouldn't be treated like that no matter what. Believe she's a fake, believe she's real, love her art, hate it. None of those opinions should be seen as an okay to harass anyone. Even if Tammy was a fake beginner, my points would still stand. This behavior is gross, and even in the scenario of these being experiments, a lot of people fell for them and genuinely acted this way. Like they genuinely thought they were beginners and decided, yeah, I'm gonna act like this. And Tammy came back from her quitting with an adorable art style which I love. I love the way she draws, and I can't wait to watch future works and see her art journey progress. And for beginner artists out there, some things I like to remind you before I get out to our conclusion is, have fun. You're gonna have a hard time if you don't enjoy yourself at least a little bit. And also, everyone moves at their own pace. Nobody's art journeys are the same, so don't be beat down when you see others that seem faster, or seem better, especially since you don't know the resources or how long they've been studying. Don't worry about finding an art style. Things will come along when they do. The more art styles you have will ultimately help you figure out which art style works best for you. And finally, don't beat yourself up when you don't meet your own standards. Your quote-unquote bad works can be a reminder of where you need to improve. They're good to look back on and definitely fun to redraw. Not every piece will be perfect, and that's okay. But yeah, I just wanted to give those tips for beginners watching, since I'm sure a lot of you guys will be beginners who are drawn to this title. All of these tips are kind of small, but are topics that I've spoken about on this channel more in depth, so if you're interested, you can go check them out. But my overall thoughts on this is, we treat beginners bad and we need to do better. Tammy, whether you like her work or not, or believe her to be a real beginner or not, you should still treat her like a real human being. But anyway, if you sat through today's yap sesh, here are the scrumptious brush codes. And again, if you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing so I can reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers. Comment your thoughts and I'll see you in the next one. Remember to love your art, love others, and love yourselves. Bye!